So here, so the other thing I want to talk about is actually locking stuff. And again, I think I might have talked about this, but if you lock things, you can do it two ways. You can press the lock icon, and that's actually to make it so I can't choose my things that are on that walls layer now. I can't select green things, and I can choose objects. So let me just turn these off now. I can choose objects, like say the stairs, and then I can say lock. And see they turn gray, and I can't pick them either. And then to get them back, I just say unlock. Okay, the advantage of locking things, right, is that I can still snap to them, but I won't accidentally pick them and move them, which is really going to ruin your day, right?
Yeah.
So what I can do is, let's say I'm really interested in like, one thing that I want you guys to do is not just use the building. So you could do a whole series of diagrams, right, where like you turn the walls off, and you're like, okay, Nick, this is a structural diagram. You know, okay, that's something, but that's pretty lame. Okay. That's easy. What I'd like you to do though is, you know, doing other things, like if you turn off the facade and show me, you know, things, or you turn off this, you know, whole piece of it, and then you start to show me the relationship between the walls and the structure. Or you use this as a scaffold, and let's just lock everything. And then I can go in, and I'm gonna go to wireframe here. And you can begin to do things like, I'm going to use the line tool, and I'm going to actually project. I don't want to snap to anything accidentally, so I'm going to make sure I'm going to use endpoints. I'm actually going to turn my snaps off, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to draw a line on this column line, and then I'm going to extrude it. So I'm going to go to a perspective view.
So I thought you locked everything. You didn't lock everything?
I did lock everything. Yeah, it just doesn't turn gray if I lock it here. If I click it and lock it, it does. So, but see, now I can select that line. I mean, nothing else gets chosen except that line, because that's the only thing that's living in this entire thing. Actually, another thing too, guys, make a layer for things that you're gonna do or you're gonna diagram. So I'm gonna call this diagram. Really important to kind of keep that isolated. So I have a line. I'm gonna extrude it. Now I might actually turn snaps on. Enable my snaps, because I actually want to snap this to the top, because I want that to represent that plane, right? And then I can go in and I'm going to copy these, and I can eyeball this. It doesn't, I mean, I could snap it. In fact, I'm going to disable snaps because it's getting in my way, but you know, I can begin to construct, and this is really simple and dumb, but now I've got my building, and you know, I can begin to look at it like diagrammatically, like these are a series of planes, and then I can put the plates in it, and I can see the relationship between that line and these other lines. So I use that. And the other thing I talked about, guys, remember the other thing I said about that skylight being kind of a like a volume? You could do that. I mean, one other thing you could do. Let's do a diagram layer, diagram 2. And I'm doing these very, very fast and not very. They're not very good. But let's put this on diagram and turn it off. Actually, okay. I'm on diagram 2, and I'm going to draw like an outline of the building. So kind of a volume. And it's not perfect, but, and then I'm going to draw this void on the inside, and I'll take both of those and extrude those. So then I can begin to get kind of a mass study of the building. So I have, or I could do these like separately, actually. Let me delete these. Oh, actually I lost my. You have to be careful when you do your options to extrude them that you don't accidentally press. If you want to keep the input, you want to make sure this is set to no. Otherwise, you lose the original curve. Okay, I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to do this one separately. because I actually want them to be two different pieces. I don't want them to be one solid with a void in it. I actually want to show that in the diagrams. I want them to be two different things. Okay, and these are on the diagram 2 layer. Actually, do I get anything by? This is where it becomes interesting. Is, you know, do I get anything by having these two? Oh, maybe. Interesting. Okay, so we've got, so you can do different things by taking your model and, you know, turning things off and on and selecting things, and then you can also make abstractions from it. Another thing that you'd want to do is make various copies of it, and then maybe you actually like erase things from it, right? So you have multiple versions of it. Some of them maybe you have like the facade turned off, or you're just looking at the planes of it, like you've made a plane in 3D space, or you have my diagram model that I made over here. In fact, I'm just going to delete.
What if you're trying to, like, you have multiple copies and then like you want to take the plane off of one but not the other? Just turn it off, or are you deleting?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think well, you could turn it off, but then the thing is, so I showed you how to turn things off and on. But another way to organize it would be to just have copies of it and then just erase those things, right? And that way you're not worried about what happens when I hit show and then everything pops back in. So that's another technique.
So you can work in Rhino just like you work in CAD.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You can certainly make
with like the copies and pet like.
Yeah.
Like,
Rhino
I'm
is.
sure you've seen like there will be like 100 things.
Oh yeah, and you guys should. And Rhino is very CAD-like. You know, anyway. So now I've got a whole row of these things, right? Just like you guys have in CAD. That's a good point to make. Let me go ahead and start removing some other things. So I'm setting up a series of these kind of studies in 3D. You know, another thing you guys can do is this. So let's say I've got my facade. To make an exploded drawing, I can move those pieces, like literally explode them in space. So I move that in top view, so that when I make my diagram, I mean, that's where that could come from. You know, I have to pull it far enough away that I could read it, and you'll have to be the judge of that in a minute here. But let's take the top and let's move it like off the roof a bit. So you set these things up. And then, okay, so now we've got all these parts, let's say, right? And then you've kind of made these studies of things, and you know, some of them are abstract, some of them are pulled apart. Then what you do is, I gave you guys a script that's on Moodle, and it's called like here. It's just like this Axon script for Rhino. It's a text file, and I imagine most of you guys haven't done any scripting before. Am I right?
I haven't.
So scripting, this is actually where we get into what I cover in computational methods. So scripting is basically a form of programming, but it's very limited. So like a script, when you're like an actor, you know, in a play, a script is just a bunch of lines you say, and then a person says something, and then you say something, and it's just like linear, right? That's what this is essentially like you write a series of commands that Rhino uses, and it just follows them, like one after the other after the other. And it's not an intelligent program. Like, it doesn't know what the conditions are. It doesn't have any settings in it. You just fire it, and it just runs.
Is that a macro?
It's a macro. That's exactly a way to put it. It's a macro, okay? And this is a macro. So it's telling the computer, essentially, how to create axonometric geometry. So this is a hack. There isn't, as of yet, an axonometric camera in Rhino. So what they do is they actually skew the geometry 45 degrees so that in the top view, it looks and it's proportioned as an axonometric drawing. So what you do is you take the script and you select it and you copy it. And here's the key, guys, and I'll say this again, but do all your stuff in your model before you run the script, because it will mess up your geometry. So save a copy of it, or save copies on a different layer or something, because it basically is going to change your geometry. Another point I want to make too is if you want a different view, you actually have to rotate the model differently. So I'm just going to rotate this one a different thing to show you. So you go to top view, and whatever piece is pointed south, down, will be the right-hand side of the axonometric view when you run the script. Okay, so if you want the front of the building to be, there, you actually have to rotate it. So if that's the front, you got to rotate it like that. Or you can rotate so this is the south, and then this will be the right side. So you have to be aware of that rotation. Okay, and it goes without saying that these should all be the same orientation, unless you want to show something different. You don't want to keep just arbitrarily like rotating stuff. Okay, so I got my geometry, and I got my script, and I've copied it. Now I paste it. You got to be in top view, by the way. Oh, and okay, you have to be in quad view by default. So you pitch this icon, and you get a top perspective front right. Okay, so click this first. Be in top view, and then run the script. So paste, and then you need to select select objects. You just say all. And that selects everything. Press enter, crunch, crunch, crunch. And then your top view is going to be in perspective. I mean in axonometric. Now watch this though. That's what happened to your geometry. So I'm telling you, so the top view is now, those are axonometric drawings. Okay, well they're not yet. They're axonometric models. Let me do that again. Okay. So before you do the script, make sure all your geometry, you have things on the layers you want, you have things oriented the way you want. Click on the icon here for 4 viewports with the left mouse button, and that gives you the 4 viewports by default. The script needs a top view and a right-hand view, and this kind of forces that. It will not work if you're in a different configuration. Okay, it's really dumb. You have to be in top view because that's where your axonometric is going to show up. Paste the script into the command window. And then when it asks which objects, you probably want to say all. Otherwise, you can select them with the mouse, but all is fine. So type in all, press enter. Press enter again, crunch, crunch, crunch. And there, top view is your stuff. Okay.
So question, is that the only view you can get, like, with the isometric? You can't pan around in that and lower your eye, so to speak?
Oh, I mean, you can zoom in and out. I mean, it just moves. It just makes the model
but you
like
can't
that.
pan once you do this.
It wouldn't be an 45-degree axonometric.
You can't
You were
orbit.
saying you could have ISOs from the bottom of the building.
Yeah, what you do is take the building,
just
flip it
over.
upside down, and then take the view. That's actually
Okay.
great. That would be awesome to see.
Okay.
That's what Peter Eisenman
Sorry,
drawing.
that's what I was.
Yeah. But you got to do it before you do this, right?
Okay.
You're stuck. Okay. Save a copy before you do this. Definitely. You can actually. I shouldn't make it sound so dire. You can skew it negative 45 degrees, and that'll undo it. But that's another step, right? Okay. So you got this. Now the magic happens. So we're going to do a command called make 2D. So it's make 2D. And make 2D, as I warned my students in second year, is a hack. Make 2D, we use it, architects use it for stuff that it was never intended to be used for. The purpose of it is not to make fancy axonometric drawings for architects. The purpose of it is if you have 2 curves in 3D, it makes it 2D. So it basically projects the 3D curve so it's flat. We're kind of abusing it by taking geometry that's in perspective or that's in axonometric and flattening it using that command. But because we do that, it's actually forcing it to do stuff that it's really not designed to do. The memory requirements of it, it's pushing it. It's like rewiring your Roomba to mow your lawn. You can do it, but you're voiding the warranty. So to speak. Does that make sense? All right, so when you do it, it can be kind of buggy, and if you throw a lot of geometry at it, it can take a long time to process all those different intersections and stuff. So it's not a command that is, it's not always going to work exactly the way you want it to. You just have to kind of deal with it. But it is really, really good at making these axonometric diagrams. It's beautiful. Okay, so you go make 2D. And then you select the objects, and you can do different things. You can just sweep, say you just want to make these into a drawing. You could also do all. And I'll show you guys later. You can use this command for perspective views too. So if you had a perspective camera, Make2D works for that too. We're just going to use it right now for Axonometric. So you might just say all for now. And then you press enter, and then it says the layout. Okay, you want the current view. You can check show hidden lines and maintain layers. And what that will do is that you get a series of like layers in Illustrator that are all your layers from your drawing. So the more organized you are, your Illustrator drawing is exactly that level of organization. It doesn't obliterate that information. So if you're, and then you'll also get hidden lines. So it actually differentiates between visible and hidden lines for you, which is awesome.
So
Okay.
will it come into Illustrator where, like, if you go under the layers in Illustrator and, like, say I wanted all of my diagram.
Well,
everything on
wait
the
until I
page.
show you, and
Okay.
then ask, because it'll become apparent. Okay, so I hit OK, and it's going to crunch. And then look at that. Okay, then you get these. This yellow are the selected lines, and if you can't find them, click on this magnifying glass with the yellow, and that'll zoom to selected. That automatically zooms to whatever the program selected, which is what you just made. And you could, what might be wise would be to right now just say File, Export Selected, rather than losing that selection. Just get it out of there. Okay. So then I go to Export, and I say Adobe Illustrator, and I say My Lines, and you can save it. And then here you can actually give it a scale if you want to. So I can make this 1/8 inch scale by saying 1 foot is 0.125 inches. So you can get a scale straight away. Okay. Say OK. And then open these up in Illustrator. And zoom out. And you actually get your lines of things. And you can't really see it because they're white lines. Actually, okay, so that's the thing. Everything comes in on the color with the colors that it had. Let's change the artboard really quick too. Just make this big enough here. It doesn't do anything with the artboard, so you have to kind of make your own, or cut and paste it into a new one.
Would you want to go ahead and make that a 24 by 36?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, go into document setup, make it 24 by 36 up here. This is actually huge because I made it 8 scale. Okay, so I got my lines. Everything comes in with the color that it is. So if I go to my layers, the hidden lines are white. That ain't gonna work on a white background, right? White lines on white, you can't see them. So the first thing I always do is I select everything. I do like Control A, and I go in and I make the stroke black. So I open my swatches up, and I have to add swatches. So I go Open Swatch Library, Default, CMYK.
Isn't that gonna make it to where you can't select separate groupings of things?
No, you will, because they're on layers already. So you don't need to. That's a good point, Clark. But you don't need to because they're already on layers. So if I make them black, now you can begin to see them. And then if I go into my layers palette, let me just pick my hidden layers. See, they're all hidden, walls hidden, railings hidden. And let's take those and let's make the stroke of those like 0.25. So they're black, but 0.25. And let's see. So you can see they're starting to read differently. I got some work to do, but they're starting to read. Maybe I'll make them gray. But this is way easier than drawing it by hand in AutoCAD. I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but so again, you can make them finer. They look better on my monitor, but. So you could do dashed lines, all the stuff I showed you guys I do in Illustrator. Now, this is only the beginning though, right? Because you want to begin to start to add more differentiation between them. Like it's not just enough to pop them out and then go hidden line. In order to get them to read, like look at but look how nice these are just as a diagram. If you had like the outline of the building. What if I went in and I've got, let me get this object back here. Where's my layers? Let's look at this one here, this diagram too. So I could go in, and this is the thing though, is that it doesn't really recognize the object. So you actually have to go in and you have to do a little bit of work on the lines themselves.
It doesn't, what do you mean it doesn't recognize?
It doesn't, when it pops in, it doesn't know that thing is an object.
Ah, right.
So the lines come in individually. So let me go in and actually edit this a bit.
It makes it easier to move them around, right? On the Illustrator page.
It can, yeah. I mean, but it's like, so the hidden lines, all it knows, so the hidden lines for this object are actually tied up with the hidden lines from this object. But what if I wanted to go in with this piece? Oh, another thing too, guys, with the layers that are white like that, in Illustrator, when you pick something, it uses the color of the layer to do the selection window. So I think I showed you this. You want to double click that layer and change the color swatch to something that reads. So like orange or lavender or whatever, instead of, see now it's purple instead of white. So pick these lines, and I'm holding shift when I do this. And I can take those, and you know what? Go ahead and group them together. That way you kind of keep them if you want to change them again. And then I go in and I can set them up and start making them read as a hidden line. So now I've got like a volume diagram, right? And then the last piece. Let me just go ahead and turn off everything else so we're focused on this one thing here. Last piece might be the silhouette, and you'd be like, okay. So the silhouette you could accomplish two different ways. Let me get this zoomed in here. The silhouette is that outline that kind of sets it off. You could do a new layer. You could lock the layer and then you could use the pen tool with a black line that's thick, and you could draw that silhouette, manually, which isn't like terrible for this shape. Might get more complex if you get more complicated geometry. But you've got that, and you can do. Oh, you know what? It's hidden line. It's dashed. Turn that off. So you begin to get that kind of thing. Okay, so that works. You can do that. The other thing you can do is go in. And I'm going to make a copy. Actually, no. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. And I haven't shown you guys this yet, but you can choose all the lines. And you can go in and you can use the live paint bucket, which I think I talked about in the video, but I may not have shown in class. So if I go to my fill and I go to my swatches, where did I turn off my swatches? Okay, let me open up my swatches.
Is that what it means? It's turned off?
The swatch has disappeared. Here we go. There we go. Okay, and I can go in, and it's like a paint bucket, and so I can take this, and I can fill in. So you can use this to tone your drawings up. Right. That's what that like live paint tool does. It's kind of like it kind of fills in the things for it. That's not. And then you could take that live paint group, and you could expand it. And remember, live paint it gives you two groups. One group are the tone pieces, and the other group are the lines. So I can take that tone group, and I can go in and I can choose that group. Oh, I turned it off. That doesn't help. And you could go into transparency. Go into opacity, make that a multiply. And that's going to give you back. Let me open this up here. It should make those lines read through. They're not. My hidden lines aren't. No. Maybe you know what? I need to adjust the. Yeah, if you adjust the layer thing, so that you can begin to add tone to your drawings with that. This is actually too much for me. You might actually go in with that group and maybe even tone down the opacity a bit. So I'm using the hidden. I'm using like the setting for multiply because that lets the lines read through, and I'm using the opacity to just kind of change that a bit. But what I wanted to talk about with the silhouette, so I could turn this off here. I can use the same technique to do a silhouette. So let me go ahead and undo all that stuff.
So why does multiply mean let the lines come through?
Because it instead of making it kind of like a milky transparency where the color of the transparency affects the color that's underneath it, it ignores it and it lets the black read all the way through. It just multiplies the numbers instead of like adds them together.
Okay.
don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I know we're over time. Let me just finish this quick piece here, if you guys are interested. So I'm going to choose all the lines on that layer again, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to turn off this like silhouette, and I'm going to make I'm actually going to delete this here. So I'm going to choose all the lines and do a live paint group again. And what I'm going to do is just kind of hacky. I'm just going to flood everything. Okay, so I've got that shape of this thing. Then if I expand it, I can basically go into Pathfinder. I can actually ungroup that, ungroup this group, go into Pathfinder, and then basically add them all together. And now that's the outline. So so basically I use the flood because it's quicker to just fill everything, and then I grab the edge of that flood, and that's my silhouette. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of hacky, but it makes it so you just use the Pathfinder to kind of put them all together. Now, and that's faster than drawing with the pen tool. I don't have as much control as I do, but if you have like shapes that are not regular or very complicated, this just bangs it out.
But it doesn't allow you to do the different line weight though, right?
Yeah, it does, because it makes it a line.
But isn't in the convention, shouldn't those also be dark, the corners, like right here and here? No? I thought anything that had a back, which you couldn't see.
You could do that. I'm just separating it from the page.
Oh, I see.
Try it. I'm not. So anyway, what I want you guys to do is get some of these things out, and let's experiment with the different hierarchies, and let's see what like looks good. Let's see where we have problems with, how we can diagram abstractly. Like I think this really explains the building like really well, but it's not overly complicated. You can see. I mean, okay, I've done this for a while, but it's so much faster than drawing them by hand to just generate them from the model. And I mean, especially when you get into your buildings, when you actually get into, this kind of stuff.
OMG.
I think that can become, now I'll warn you guys, it takes a lot of effort to get these things kind of cleaned up, to make them like read really well. Most of the time you're going to spend is going to actually be in Adobe Illustrator making really sweet drawings. Don't spend too long in Rhino, okay? The magic happens in Illustrator. Don't forget, there's that Illustrator video that I posted, if you guys haven't checked that out yet, where I do run through all the commands and the pen tool, and so if you need a refresher, that's online. This is going to be online in a few hours here when I get it encoded. Any questions about this stuff?
So 2 diagrams?
2 diagrams, whatever you want. Yeah.
Thursday.
What's that?
For Thursday.
For Thursday, and I want to see them printed just so we can look at them again, and I'll try to make that a bit more organized than last time. But hopefully this is going to be a little bit easier. Just experiment with the technique so you can get stuff out when you want it, when you need it. Experiment with hierarchy, in 3D. Let's just see. Bring what you've got for Thursday. We'll see how long it takes you. Okay, it's not graded. Let's just see how far we get. Okay. 24 by 36, I think, is probably, or you know what? 11 by 17. That's cheaper, right?
One on each one.
Yeah, one on each one. 11 by 17. Why don't we do that? Okay. Color though, so you get the lines to read pretty well. That's cheaper.
And 3D, so you call that's 2 diagrams there?
That's 2 diagrams. Yep.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
One has to be exploded.
What's that?
One has to be exploded.
No, I think one is abstract and one is like more realistic, let's say, right? One uses the building elements and one uses elements that you draw using the building as a scaffold or something like that. Okay? Yeah, so like one of these is acceptable as one and one of these is acceptable as one, right? Okay. Let's give that a shot. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
You get my email.
Mm-hmm.